Hi, all. I'm Professor Good, and I wanted to let you know that we had a great Zoom discussion about the red tent. I can't recapture that whole discussion here, but I thought I would bring up some points that we discussed from the prologue through part one. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see a PowerPoint that I've developed for this discussion. Okay, so the first question we have to ask is, why are we reading this novel in a literature of the Bible class? It certainly is a novel that's based on the Bible, but why go ahead and read that in a Bible class that already has so much reading in it that we could not possibly cover the entire Bible? Well, one of the reasons why is that while the story of Dina's life is imagined, there's no way that we could possibly know what Dina as a character, what her actual life would have been like. We do get an amazing account of a historical and cultural context in this novel. The author has done a terrific job of researching the time period and what it would have been like to live during that time period, all of the tribal systems and the domestic systems and everything that would have been going through the god systems. And so it's amazingly captured in this novel in a way that if I were to lecture on it, would have been so much more boring and yet crucial to understanding the Bible as a historical text. In addition, the novel also does a terrific job of setting up themes that follow along with biblical themes and expands on them using more modern day language and storytelling methods that we're more familiar with. So by using the novel as a context, we can easily then go back in and have, I think, a better understanding of the Bible itself. Some themes that I want you to particularly pay attention to when reading the novel, and they're very well set up in the prologue and the part one, is that now we're dealing with a tribal and clan system. There's no centralized government yet. There's no kings or anything like that. It's sort of ruled, through households and sometimes through a combination of households. And in this particular story, of course, the clan initially is Laban's clan, and then Jacob comes in, and Laban has the daughters, and they bring in bondsmen and bondswomen and their children, and so we begin to see the building up of a household or a clan. I want you to also pay attention to the great separation of men's and women's roles, right? They're very, very separate and yet very, very necessary to the survival of the clan and the household. Pay particular attention to the tyranny of the patriarchy, that patriarchal system that is dominant in this particular culture, and how it controls not only the women's lives, which of course we always talk about, but also the men's lives, that there are severe limitations. While there's a great deal of order, there are severe limitations as to what men and women can do within this system. Also, we see the great focus on the domestic life, the life of women, which is often not captured in biblical histories. And so we see what it would have been like to have that domestic day-to-day life that was so important to the survival of the clan, of the household, of the family, the preparation of food, the weaving of clothing, all of these things, not only important to the survival of the family, but these things could also be used in trade and so contribute to the economic success of the family. Of course, in addition to what the men were doing, with shepherding and the wool and all of that stuff, and then how that would be then picked up by the women and made more practical. We also see the multiple God system here. And it's very important to understand that even in the Bible, especially in the first part that we're reading now in Genesis, that there is an acknowledgement that there was a multiple God system. We do not have a monotheistic system at this time. Jacob does not claim that his God is the only God, that his God is the most powerful God. And that is, of course, what we see, especially in the early Bibles, in the other early books of the Bible. We see the importance of the mother and father roles, very, very different, but that they have very much assigned roles in raising the children towards certain purposes, and what they, the values that they teach, the stories that they tell, and the chores and the roles and how they will, what they need to learn in order to perpetuate the system in a sustainable way. Of course, we see the importance of women becoming a mother in order to secure some kind of status within the household or within the clan or even the tribal system, but the extreme vulnerability of doing so. Naturally, of course, in this system, you want to be a mother of sons. This gives you the most status. But that just, it becoming pregnant, and of course, even in childbearing, the mortality rate for women was astronomical, right? So it was very likely that women would not survive childbearing. So we see, this need for, multiple wives, and then of course a terrific support system that the women provide, right? In this idea of storytelling. Now, we also see here the great importance of storytelling, which the Bible would not exist if we did not understand that there was a tremendous need for storytelling. Why? Why was there storytelling? Well, of course, the storytelling was for the purpose of entertaining. This is how they entertain themselves. They did not have TV, they didn't have social media, they did not have movies. And so storytelling was very important. We also did not have a lot of writing yet. Writing was a technology that was not yet fully developed. And so we have great oral culture here, where that's how stories got told, right? Orally, that's how things got remembered. You told the stories, and then those stories would get passed on generation to generation. And therefore, not only were they entertaining, but they were important for passing on the culture and for passing on the values of that culture to future generations. It was, in fact, a way of achieving some sort of immortality through those stories. Getting to the prologue and part one, of course, what we see in the prologue is this idea of the silencing of Dina's voice. And I don't want to spoil anything in the Bible or in the novel, but what we see is that what happens to Dina is significant in the change of what happens to the Israelites. And yet in the Bible, she only has 2 or 3 lines. And so what this author does, and it was very common, very popular trend in the 1990s, to seek out these women's voices and give them a story, sort of recapture their story, and give women stories from the past so that they would have a voice. There is also this need to understand the lives of Dina's mothers in order to understand Dina's story. And that, of course, becomes very metaphorical, that in order to understand, who we are as humans, that we need to understand, the culture from which we come, our mothers and our fathers. And so this is very important, and we capture that in the prologue through part 1. So one other thing that I wanted to tell you is the very nature of the title, right? The red tent. And in the red tent, we see that the women all go to the red tent when they're having their menstrual cycles or when they are childbearing. And it is sort of a romanticized view of what that must have been like. And in fact, culturally, the reason that they would have to go to this tent is because when women were having their menstrual cycles or after they gave a baby, they were considered unclean. In fact, they were called the untouchables because they were unclean. And so they would have to be separated from the clan or from the household until they became clean again. And so it's a very, very sort of, oppressive situation, that what is biologically natural for these women makes them unclean and untouchable. And what the red tent begins to do is sort of set up what must that have been like to have to go to this red tent. And she imagines, and it would be nice to think that while they are there, that the women create a community amongst themselves and a support system amongst themselves and a way to empower themselves, within the clan, within, with their husband and with their fathers. And so we see, sort of this idea of, even how they're going to achieve something, what they're going to do, how they're going to influence the men in their lives. So I'm hoping you're enjoying the novel. I hope you find this video useful, and we will continue to have our discussions of the Red Tent as we proceed through the novel. Have a great day.